governance issues. What about, education, healthcare? Um, how do you anticipate his remarks to go in those areas too?
Again, I do expect that the president is probably going to take a very activist position on these issues. His initial moves in office tells you that he appears to be aware and rather active and sensitive about those subjects. And so, for example, there's been an education forum that has been held in Ho, and he's spoken about Agenda 111 and the fact that not much has been done in that area. I think there's a clear recognition that these are issues that are hitting Ghanaians hard in the face, and we cannot take them for granted anymore. On the question of education, for example, we have to do our best to depoliticize the subject. Unfortunately, because education was a flagship policy of the NPP, the NDC was forced to respond. It was the same difficult approach that was adopted in the late 1980s, when the new educational reforms then were introduced, the GHS system at the time, and they were heavily opposed by the then opposition, and because of that, they were politicized. Unfortunately, the same model was adopted in the introduction of free SHS. When a country politicizes education, no one wins. And the reason is because both parties will be racing down to the bottom, as it were, to outdo each other in the educational space, and in the process, the inconsistencies and the haphazardness of things will continue. Free SHS has come to stay. Unfortunately, nothing can be done about it in the context of its pure freeness. So the least that we can do as a country will be to embrace a certain model of consensus moving forward. How do we come together as a country to adopt free SHS as a policy that will not change government to government? And how do we remove the steep politicization of it when the discussion is being had about it? Almost a zero-sum game. You are either for it or you are against it. It can't be like that. Clearly, there are major issues in the educational space. The world is not waiting for us. If we want to continue training the human the labor material for the world, that will be worthy of the competition. We would have to have an educational system that is fit for purpose. In the circumstances of things, there are teething problems, and the parties continue to back at each other without looking at the subject. So I do hope that he will bring, more importantly, the subject of depoliticizing education to the fore, and I'm sure that a subject like that will be embraced. The question of healthcare is equally similar in the context of importance, and I'm sure the president will touch on the need for healthcare infrastructure and how the country, again, all these have to be embraced as a nation. Most important, I just want to say this finally, that it's important for us to understand that these are issues that have been dealt with in and by the Constitution. The Constitution recognizes the need for key social interventions in the nature of education and healthcare. They are all contained in the directive principles of state policy. So these are not political issues. They are issues that confront Ghanaians, and it's important that we have minimum national policy that cuts across the parties, and that will be respected and regarded by both parties, regardless of who's in power. And I'm sure, like I said, moving forward, these moderate positions would likely help from a developmental standpoint without extreme politicization that we often tend to bring to the subject.
Thank you.